Blood splattered across the arid Wyoming soil as Sarah Atkins held her trembling hands above her mother's still body, the woman's life seeping away beneath the midday sun of 1878. The sound of her father's shouts still echoed through her mind as he stormed away, rifle in hand, leaving her alone with the consequences of what he called her cursed touch. "I never should have let you tend to her." Jeremiah Atkins had roared minutes earlier, his weathered face contorted with grief and rage. "Everything you touch withers and dies. You're nothing but a curse on this family." Sarah's tears fell onto her mother's peaceful face. Elizabeth Atkins had been fighting consumption for months, and despite Sarah's devoted nursing and the herbs she'd gathered from the hills, death had claimed her anyway. Now, at 22, Sarah found herself truly alone in a world that had never been kind to her. The funeral was a sparse affair. Few neighbors bothered to travel the distance to their remote homestead. Her father stood stone-faced through the brief service, refusing to meet her eyes even once. That night, as Sarah prepared a meager supper, Jeremiah slammed his fist on the table. "Pack your things," he growled, his voice hollow. "I want you gone by morning. This land has nothing for you now." "Father, please," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "Where would I go?" "To town, to hell, I don't care," he spat. "Your mother coddled you too much, filled your head with books and nonsense instead of teaching you to be a proper woman. Look where your fancy healing ways got her." Sarah stood rigid, fighting back tears. "Mother died of consumption. Nothing could have saved her." "Nothing you did saved her," he corrected coldly. "And I can't bear to look at you another day." That night, Sarah packed her few belongings, 3 dresses, her mother's worn Bible, a book of medicinal plants, and the silver locket containing a sketch of her mother. By dawn, she had hitched their old mare to the small cart and loaded her trunk. Her father watched from the porch, a bottle dangling from his fingers. "Father," she said softly, approaching him one last time, "I never meant to bring pain to this family." "Yet you did," he replied flatly. "Born under a blood moon, your mother bleeding for days afterward. Should have known then what you were." Sarah flinched as if struck. These were old wounds, reopened now with cruel precision. Her father had always been superstitious, always quick to blame her when crops failed or animals took sick. Her mother had protected her from the worst of his accusations, but now that shield was gone. "Goodbye, father," she said, climbing onto the cart. He didn't respond, merely raised the bottle to his lips and turned his back. The journey to Medicine Bow took most of the day. The small but growing town served as a stop along the Union Pacific Railroad, bringing a steady stream of settlers, drifters, and fortune seekers. Sarah had only been there a handful of times, always with her mother to sell eggs or trade for supplies. Now she arrived alone, with nowhere to go and night approaching. The main street bustled with activity cowboys fresh off cattle drives, railroad workers finishing their day's labor, and ladies of questionable reputation beginning theirs. Sarah felt painfully out of place, her homespun dress and sun-bronzed face marking her as a farmer's daughter. She drew the cart to a stop outside the general store just as the owner was closing up. "Excuse me, sir," she called. "Do you know of any respectable place where a woman might find work and lodging?" The storekeeper, a balding man with kind eyes, looked her over with concern. "You're the Atkins girl, aren't you? Heard about your mother. My condolences." "Thank you," Sarah replied, the simple kindness nearly undoing her composure. "Mrs. Hoffman at the boarding house might have a room," he offered. "As for work," he scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Doc Preston's been looking for help. His nurse moved to Cheyenne last month." Hope flickered in Sarah's chest. She had learned much about healing from her mother, who had been the unofficial midwife for nearby homesteads. "Where might I find the doctor?" The storekeeper pointed down the street. "2-story building with the green shutters. If he's not there, try the saloon." He winked. "Not for drinking, mind you. Seems half the town manages to injure themselves there nightly, keeping him in business." Sarah thanked him and turned the cart toward the boarding house. Mrs. Hoffman, a stern-faced German widow, eyed her suspiciously but offered a small room at a weekly rate Sarah could ill afford. Still, it was clean and private, and the alternative was sleeping in her cart. After settling in, Sarah ventured to find Dr. Preston. The growing darkness made her nervous. She had rarely been alone in town, especially after sunset. Men's eyes followed her as she hurried along the boardwalk, and she clutched her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The doctor's office was dark, confirming the storekeeper's prediction. Sarah hesitated at the swinging doors of the Silver Dollar Saloon, the raucous laughter and piano music spilling into the street. It was no place for a respectable woman, but desperation pushed her forward. The moment she entered, the pungent smell of whiskey, tobacco, and unwashed bodies assaulted her senses. Several heads turned in her direction, and the piano player struck a wrong note before continuing. Sarah spotted an older gentleman in the corner, sipping whiskey while binding a cowboy's bloodied hand. She approached cautiously. "Dr. Preston?" The man looked up, surprise evident on his weathered face. "Yes, madam, don't believe I've had the pleasure." "Sarah Atkins, sir." "I was told you might need assistance in your practice. I have some knowledge of herbs and healing from my mother." Before the doctor could respond, a commotion erupted at the bar. Two cowboys squared off, one shoving the other hard enough to send him crashing into a table. Cards and chips scattered as the table's occupants jumped to their feet, and within seconds, the altercation had spread. "Down!" someone shouted as a chair flew through the air. Sarah felt a strong hand on her shoulder pushing her toward the floor just as the chair splintered against the wall where she had been standing. She found herself crouched beside a tall man with eyes the color of a summer sky and a face that, despite the chaos, remained calm. "Stay low," he advised, his voice deep and steady. "This'll blow over quick once Hank brings out his shotgun." True to his word, the barkeeper appeared with a double barrel, firing once into the ceiling. Plaster rained down, and the fighting stopped as abruptly as it had begun. "Next shot's not going up," Hank announced grimly. "Anyone still feeling rowdy can take it outside or to the undertaker. Your choice." Grumbling, the men returned to their drinks or slunk out the door. Sarah's protector helped her to her feet, his hand warm and calloused against hers. "You all right, miss?" he asked, genuine concern in his eyes. "Saloon's no place for a lady after dark." "I was looking for Dr. Preston," Sarah explained, brushing dust from her skirt. "I'm in need of employment." "Quinn," the man introduced himself with a slight tip of his hat. "Quinn Kincaid." "Sarah Atkins." "Miss Atkins," Dr. Preston interrupted, approaching them. "As I was about to say before the entertainment began, I do indeed need help at my practice, but I can't offer much pay medicine. Beau's not exactly overflowing with wealthy patients." "I would be grateful for any position," Sarah assured him. "Come by tomorrow morning then and we'll discuss it further." The doctor nodded to Quinn. "Evening, Kincaid. How's that shoulder healing?" "Well enough," Quinn replied. "Your stitching holds better than most." "High praise from a man who's been patched up from Texas to Montana," Preston chuckled before excusing himself to attend to another patient. Quinn turned back to Sarah. "Let me walk you to wherever you're staying. Streets aren't safe for a woman alone." Sarah hesitated, weighing her limited options. Her instinct said to trust this stranger, though she'd been wrong before. "The boarding house on Pine Street," she finally said. "Mrs. Hoffman's place. That's on my way." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" Outside, the night air cooled her flushed cheeks. Quinn walked beside her, matching his long strides to her shorter ones. In the moonlight, she could better see him tall and broad-shouldered, with a face that spoke of long days under the sun. His clothes were trail-worn but clean, marking him as a working cowboy rather than a drifter. "New to town?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Yes," she answered, not wanting to share her full circumstances with a stranger. "Medicine Beau's rough around the edges, but there are good people here." He paused. "If you don't mind my asking, what brings a lady like yourself to town alone?" Something in his tone, respectful curiosity without judgment, loosened her guard. "My mother died last week. My father decided it was time I made my own way." Quinn studied her face. "I'm sorry about your mother," he said simply. "Thank you," Sarah replied, surprised by how much those few words meant. They reached the boarding house steps, and Sarah turned to him. "Thank you for your escort, Mr. Kincaid." "Quinn," he corrected with a small smile. "Mr. Kincaid was my father, God rest him." "Quinn, then." She found herself returning his smile. "And thank you for saving me from that flying chair." Just happened to be in the right place. His eyes crinkled at the corners, though I thank God for putting me there all the same. With a tip of his hat, he departed, leaving Sarah to wonder about the strange twist of fate that had brought her to Medicine Bow and into the path of Quinn Kincaid. The next morning, Sarah presented herself at Dr. Preston's office, her hair neatly pinned and wearing her best dress. The doctor's practice consisted of 2 rooms, a waiting area with a desk and chairs, and an examination room with a cabinet of medicines and supplies. "Can you read and write?" Preston asked after inviting her in. "Yes, sir, my mother taught me." "Good. That'll help with keeping records and reading medical texts." He gestured to the disorganized stacks of papers on his desk. "As you can see, I'm not much for paperwork." Over the next hour, he outlined her duties: cleaning the office, assisting with patients, preparing simple medicines, and keeping the books. The pay was meager but included a small room behind the practice that would save her the boarding house fees. "I'll take it," Sarah said without hesitation. "There's one more thing," Preston added, his expression serious. "Medicine Bow's growing, but it's still a small town. People talk. Working closely with a man, even a doctor, might raise eyebrows. Are you prepared for that?" Sarah thought of her father's accusations, the whispers that had followed her even on their remote homestead. "I'm accustomed to people's judgment, doctor. It won't deter me." Preston nodded approvingly. "Then we have an agreement." The weeks that followed established a new rhythm to Sarah's life. She rose early to clean and prepare the office, assisted Dr. Preston with patients throughout the day, and spent evenings studying his medical books. The work was demanding but fulfilling, and she discovered she had a natural aptitude for it. Quinn Kincaid reappeared occasionally, sometimes bringing in injured ranch hands, other times stopping by with a bunch of wildflowers to brighten up the waiting room. Sarah found herself looking forward to his visits, his easy smile a bright spot in her busy days. She learned he worked at the Diamond Bar Ranch 15 miles outside town, breaking horses and driving cattle. He had a reputation as one of the best horsemen in the territory, and even Dr. Preston spoke highly of him. "Kincaid's not like most of these cowboys," Preston told her one evening as they cleaned up after treating a miner's broken leg. "Got his head screwed on right, saves his money instead of drinking it away. Word is he's buying a piece of land soon." Sarah tried not to appear too interested. "He seems kind." "That he is," Preston agreed. "Lost his parents young, raised by his uncle up in Montana. Hard life, but it built character." Sarah thought of her own losses, how they had shaped her. Perhaps that was why she felt a connection to Quinn. They both understood what it meant to forge a path alone. As summer progressed, Medicine Bow grew busier. The railroad brought more travelers, and with them came injuries and illnesses that kept Dr. Preston and Sarah working long hours. Sarah's knowledge of herbal remedies impressed the doctor, and he encouraged her to prepare treatments that complemented his more conventional medicines. News traveled fast in small towns, and soon women were coming specifically to see the healer girl, as they called her. Sarah's gentle touch and understanding ear made her popular, especially among the women who found Dr. Preston's gruff manner intimidating. Not everyone approved, however. Whispers followed her at church and in the general store. Some called her methods folk superstition, while others revived the old rumors from her homestead days that she brought misfortune, that her touch was cursed. Quinn heard these rumors one evening at the saloon and confronted the men spreading them. "Miss Atkins saved Bart Miller's boy when the fever nearly took him," he said firmly. "And she eased Mrs. Wilson's passing when nothing else could be done. Anyone calling her cursed is either a fool or a liar." The men backed down under Quinn's steady gaze, but the whispers continued. Sarah was more affected than she let on, her father's words echoing painfully whenever she heard these accusations. One stormy evening in late August, Sarah was alone in the office completing patient records when the door burst open. Quinn staggered in, supporting a young boy of about 12 who was pale and shivering. "Doc Preston here?" Quinn asked urgently, water dripping from his hat. "He was called to a berth at the Peterson farm," Sarah replied, immediately clearing the examination table. "What happened?" "Snake bite. Water moccasin by the creek, found him about an hour ago." Quinn lifted the boy onto the table. This is Tyler, ranch owner's son. He snuck out to fish and got more than he bargained for. Sarah examined the boy's leg, where 2 puncture marks were swollen and angry red against his pale skin. Tyler's breathing was shallow, his pulse rapid. "How do you feel, Tyler?" she asked, keeping her voice calm despite her racing heart. "Sea cold," the boy stammered, "and my mouth tastes funny." Quinn's eyes met hers over the boy's head. "Can you help him?" Sarah swallowed hard. She had assisted Dr. Preston with snake bites before, but never managed one alone. The treatment required careful timing and judgment too aggressive, and the cure could be as dangerous as the venom. "I'll do everything I can," she promised, moving to the medicine cabinet. "But you should know that some people in town believe I bring bad luck, not healing." Quinn's expression hardened. "I don't put stock in superstition, Miss Atkins. I believe in what I've seen with my own eyes." His faith steadied her. Sarah mixed a poultice of plantain and echinacea to draw out the poison while preparing a tincture of willow bark for the fever she knew would come. Working quickly, she cleaned the wound and applied the poultice, then administered the tincture. "We need to keep the leg below his heart," she instructed Quinn, arranging pillows, "and he'll need fluids constantly." Through the night, they worked together to save Tyler. Quinn fetched water, stoked the fire, and helped hold the boy during his worst spasms. Sarah applied fresh poultices, monitored his pulse, and whispered encouragement as the boy drifted between consciousness and delirium. Near dawn, Tyler's fever broke. His breathing steadied, and when he opened his eyes, they were clear and focused. "Am I going to die?" he asked weakly. "Not today," Sarah assured him, relief flooding through her. "But you might want to look before you reach into bushes next time." The boy managed a small smile before drifting into normal sleep. Sarah slumped into a chair, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming her. "You should rest," Quinn said softly, bringing her a cup of coffee. "I'll watch him." "Thank you," she whispered, accepting the cup. Their fingers brushed, and she felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with fatigue. Quinn sat beside her. "You were amazing," he said, his voice low and intense. "Most experienced doctors would have struggled with that bite." Sarah shook her head. "I only did what my mother taught me. Your mother must have been a remarkable woman." "She was," Sarah agreed, unexpected tears pricking her eyes. "She believed healing was a gift, not just a skill. She used to say that hands that tend with love heal twice as fast." Quinn was quiet for a moment, watching her. "Your father was wrong, you know." Sarah looked up, startled. "What?" "I've heard the talk. That your father called you a curse, blamed you for misfortunes." His jaw tightened. "Any man who can't see the blessing you are is blind." The simple declaration, spoken with such certainty, broke something inside Sarah. Tears she had held back for months spilled down her cheeks. Quinn hesitated only a moment before drawing her into his arms, letting her weep against his shoulder. "I tried so hard," she confessed between sobs. "I tried everything to save her, but the consumption took her anyway. And he blamed me, said I was born under a bad sign, that everything I touched withered." Quinn stroked her hair gently. "The only curse I see is the one that blinded him to the remarkable daughter he had." When Sarah's tears subsided, she pulled away, embarrassed by her outburst. "I'm sorry," she began, but Quinn shook his head. "Never apologize for feeling deeply," he said. "It's what makes you a healer." In the soft light of dawn, with a sleeping boy as witness, something changed between them. A barrier fell, a possibility opened. The change manifested in small ways at first. Quinn visited the doctor's office more frequently, sometimes bringing a book he thought Sarah might enjoy or wildflowers he'd picked along the trail. Sarah found herself looking for his tall figure whenever the door opened, her heart lifting when it was him. Tyler's recovery brought unexpected benefits. His father, Charles Foster, owner of the Diamond Bar Ranch, arrived in town to collect his son and express his gratitude to Sarah. Foster was an influential man whose word carried weight in the territory. "My boy would be dead if not for you, Miss Atkins," he stated firmly, loud enough for everyone in the general store to hear. "Anyone speaks ill of you, they answer to me." The whispers about curses diminished, though they never entirely disappeared. Some superstitions run too deep to be easily uprooted, but Sarah found the town increasingly accepting of her presence and her healing ways. In early October, Quinn appeared at the office after hours, dressed in his Sunday best. "Miss Atkins," he began formally, "I was wondering if you might accompany me to the harvest dance this Saturday." Sarah looked up from her ledger, her cheeks warming. "I would be delighted, Mr. Kincaid." His smile brightened the room. "I'll call for you at 7. The night of the dance, Sarah wore her mother's blue dress, carefully altered to fit her smaller frame. She had arranged her hair in soft curls and borrowed a drop of lavender water from Mrs. Hoffman. Quinn's expression when he saw her made the effort worthwhile. "You look beautiful," he said, offering her his arm. The town hall was transformed with autumn decorations, corn husks, gourds, and paper lanterns creating a festive atmosphere. A small band played lively tunes while couples twirled across the floor. Sarah hadn't danced since before her mother's illness, and never with a partner like Quinn. He moved with the same confident grace he showed on horseback, guiding her through waltzes and reels with a gentle hand at her waist. During a break in the music, they stepped outside for air. The October night was crisp, stars brilliant above the town's few lights. "I've been meaning to tell you," Quinn said, leaning against the railing. "I finalized the purchase of that land I've been saving for. 160 acres along Battle Creek with good water and grazing." "Quinn, that's wonderful," Sarah exclaimed. "Your own ranch at last." "It's just land for now," he said modestly. "Takes more than acres to make a ranch, but it's a start." "A good start," she agreed. "You should be proud." Quinn turned to face her, his expression suddenly serious. "The thing is, Sarah, a man alone on a homestead, it's a hard life, lonely." Sarah's heart began to race. "Yes, I imagine it would be." "I find myself thinking," he continued, taking her hand in his, "that life is better shared. Dreams are bigger when there's someone to dream them with you." "Quinn, I know it hasn't been long," he said quickly, "and you might think me too forward. But I've never been a man to hesitate when I know what I want." Sarah looked up at him, at the face that had become so dear to her in such a short time. "And what is it you want, Quinn Kincaid?" "You," he said simply. "By my side, building something that lasts." "I'm asking if you might consider a future with me, Sarah Atkins. Not right away, perhaps, but someday soon." The world seemed to hold its breath as Sarah considered his words. In the month since leaving her father's homestead, she had built a life for herself, found purpose in her work with Dr. Preston, yet something had been missing: the warmth of connection, the comfort of belonging to someone who valued her exactly as she was. "I would like that very much," she answered softly. Quinn's smile was like sunrise breaking over the plains. He leaned down, hesitating just a breath away from her lips. "May I?" Instead of answering, Sarah closed the distance between them, sealing their promise with a kiss that tasted of new beginnings. Their courtship progressed through the winter months, Quinn riding into town whenever weather and work permitted. Sarah continued assisting Dr. Preston, but now she also spent evenings planning for a future that grew clearer with each passing day. In March of 1879, with the first wildflowers pushing through the melting snow, Quinn and Sarah were married in Medicine Bow's small church. Dr. Preston gave the bride away, and Mrs. Hoffman surprised everyone by weeping openly during the ceremony. After the wedding, as they prepared to travel to their new home, a messenger arrived with an unexpected letter. Sarah recognized her father's uneven handwriting immediately. "You don't have to read it," Quinn said gently, seeing her face pale. "No, I should," she replied, breaking the seal with trembling fingers. The letter was brief, the writing sometimes difficult to decipher. "Sarah, word reached me of your marriage. I am not a man of many words, but I know I did you wrong. Grief makes fools of us all, and I was the greatest fool. Your mother would be proud of what you've become. Perhaps one day, if you can find it in your heart, you might allow an old man to make amends. Your father, Jeremiah Atkins." Tears blurred Sarah's vision as she handed the letter to Quinn. "He wants reconciliation," she whispered. Quinn read it carefully before meeting her eyes. "What do you want to do?" Sarah thought for a long moment. "Not today," she decided. "Today is for new beginnings, but someday, yes, wounds need time to heal properly." Quinn nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Whenever you're ready, I'll be with you." They departed Medicine Bow amid cheers and well wishes, the wagon loaded with wedding gifts and necessities for their new life. The journey to Battle Creek took most of the day, the landscape gradually changing from flat prairie to rolling hills dotted with pine and aspen. As the sun began its descent, Quinn pointed ahead. There it is, home. Sarah caught her breath at the sight. A small cabin nestled against a stand of pines with Battle Creek winding silver through the valley below. Beyond stretched open grassland where cattle could graze, and in the distance, mountains rose blue against the sky. It's beautiful, she whispered. It needs work, Quinn admitted. The cabin's sound but simple. The land needs fencing and we'll need to build a proper barn before winter. We'll build it together, Sarah said, squeezing his hand. Day by day. Quinn helped her down from the wagon and surprised her by sweeping her into his arms. Tradition says I should carry my bride across the threshold, he explained with a grin. Inside, the cabin was indeed simple, one room with a stone fireplace, a bed frame Quinn had built himself, and basic furnishings. But someone had been there ahead of them, leaving the place clean and welcoming. A quilted bed cover brightened the bed and wildflowers stood in a jar on the table. Mrs. Foster, Quinn explained, seeing her surprise, said every bride deserves something pretty on her wedding day. That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their new home, Quinn pulled Sarah close against him. You know, he murmured into her hair, I never told you what I was doing in the saloon that night we met. I assumed you were drinking like most cowboys after a long day, Sarah replied sleepily. I was celebrating, he corrected. I just received word that my offer on this land had been accepted. I was planning my future, never imagining you'd walk through those doors and become the most important part of it. Sarah turned to face him, tracing his features in the moonlight. Do you really believe it was chance that brought us together? Quinn shook his head. I believe some things are meant to be. Your father called you a curse, but from the moment I saw you, I thanked God for putting you in my path. And I thank God for giving me the courage to walk into that saloon, Sarah whispered. In the years that followed, the Kincaid ranch flourished. Quinn's knowledge of cattle and horses combined with Sarah's practical wisdom to create a prosperous homestead. The small cabin expanded to accommodate their growing family, first a daughter with Sarah's gentle spirit and Quinn's determined blue eyes, then twin boys who ran wild across the Wyoming hills. Sarah continued to use her healing knowledge, becoming known throughout the region as someone who could be counted on in times of need. Women traveled for days to have her attend their births, and local ranchers sought her help with injuries and illnesses when Medicine Bow was too far to reach. In the spring of 1882, a wagon arrived at their ranch, carrying a thin, gray-haired man who stood uncertainly in their yard, hat in hand. Papa, Sarah whispered, recognizing him despite the years that had carved deeper lines in his face. Hello, daughter, Jeremiah Atkins said, his voice rough with emotion. I wasn't sure you'd see me. Sarah glanced at Quinn, who stood supportively beside her, then at their children watching curiously from the porch. The journey to forgiveness had been long, with many letters exchanged and much reflection. But standing there, seeing her father's humbled posture and hopeful eyes, she knew it was time to close the final wound of her past. Welcome to our home, Papa, she said, stepping forward to embrace him. We've been waiting for you. That evening, as the family gathered around the table, Quinn at one end, Sarah at the other, with children and grandfather between them, Sarah looked at the life she had built from the ashes of rejection and sorrow. Quinn caught her eye across the table and smiled, the same smile that had first warmed her heart in a rowdy saloon 4 years earlier. Blessed, she thought, the word rising in her mind like a prayer. Not cursed, never cursed, but blessed beyond measure by love that had seen beyond superstition to the truth of who she was. And in the soft light of home, surrounded by the family they had created together, Sarah and Quinn Kincaid found the fulfillment of promises made under Wyoming Star's promises of love that healed all wounds and built something stronger than either could have imagined alone.